One thing about Trump supporters, even to this day, they believe everything he said he will do. And he has virtually done nothing that he promised, not one thing. Now, he said he was going to end the opioid plague that was going on in the country. Not only is he not interested in this plague, he has defunded all programs that could help. He has cut all kinds of treatment through Medicaid that could have helped some of them. And he damn near fired several people that worked for the drug czar and made the drug czar's job very minimal. That doesn't sound like somebody that's trying to help. He's not going to help. And it's a shame that so many people are depending on this man who is so not interested in helping them. Despite all of his promises, Trump has done nothing about the devastating opioid plague. And it says among Trump's empty promises, this one stands out. His voters are suffering and they believed him. Well, there go your problem. You believed him. All right, so little more than an outrage or scandal emanates from the White House nowadays. As David Remnick of The New Yorker wrote recently, every day Trump wakes up and erodes the dignity of the presidency a little more. And that's true. That's very true. Now, I'm just going to skip down because it gets into all of the transgender stuff. The numbers emerging from the plague are grim. According to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, drug overdose is the leading cause of accidental death in the U.S., with opioid addiction contributing greatly to these figures. Further, drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. Preliminary data compiled by the New York Times show that drug overdose deaths exceed 59,000 in 2016. The Times estimate that such deaths rose 19% from the 52,404 recorded in 2015. Large increases were seen in states along the East Coast, specifically Maryland, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Maine. In Ohio, deaths mushroomed by more than 25% in 2016. Data from 2017 promises to be even more troubling. According to Tom Frieden, former director of the Center for Disease Control, this is the only area of American health that is significantly declining. The sirens have been blaring for some time now, referring to the opioid crisis in a campaign event last August in Columbus, Ohio. Donald Trump promised, if I win, I'm going to stop it. He later expounded, we're going to take all of these kids and people, not just kids, that are totally addicted. They can't break it. We're going to work with them. We are going to spend the money. We're going to get the habit broken. He ain't done none of these things. This man is so not interested in his drug plague going on in the country. It's not even funny. He hasn't even come close to that. All he's doing is slashing all kinds of programs, removing all kinds of money. He's not helping. He's making it worse. Voters in counties most buffeted by the opioid overdoses and deaths of despair responded to Trump's promises. Research by Shannon Monnet, a sociologist and demographer at Pennsylvania State University, on the 2016 election shows that nationally and specifically in the industrial Midwest, New England and Appalachia, Trump outperformed Mitt Romney in 2012 a vote in counties with higher rates of alcohol, drug, and suicide mortality. And that's because these people were counting on him. These junkies was actually a big chunk of his voters. As he frequently done for many of America's problems, Trump blamed the opioid scourge on Mexican immigrants and resolved to prevent the entry of heroin into affected communities by building a wall and deporting the bad hombres. Response for peddling drugs. Well, where's the wall? Where's the wall? That has completely left the news. These claims were patently misleading. Many of the counties that supported Trump had fewer non-citizen Mexican immigrants than the national average. More importantly, the savvy multinational drug cartels supplying heroin entered the ravished communities only after prescription opioids, which had bred much of the addiction and overdose problem, became harder to procure in 2010. The cartels merely filled a vacuum. Indeed, as the Center for Disease Control note, 3 out of 4 new heroin users report having first abused prescription opioids. Well, he's not going to blame them because, see, all of the makers of opioids in America are white. So this is why Trump is overlooking them and pointing to the Mexicans. Oldest trick in the book. Despite the blister and profess sympathies, Trump base is still awaiting score for the rampaging crisis. Top public health and drug policy jobs remain vacant. The bipartisan commission on the opioid crisis, being led by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, has failed to meet its second deadline for the interim report on how best to grapple with the epidemic. He missed the second deadline. Okay. Now, I don't count on this man doing anything. He's just a front guy to make it look like Trump is doing something. Trump is not going to do a damn thing to help a junkie in this country. Him and no other elite in this country gives a shit about a drug addict. Proposed federal budgets would cut funding to essential substance abuse programs and services. Most ominous, however, is the Republican desire to repeal Obamacare and gut Medicaid, which is the largest funder of addiction services throughout the country. Its expansion under Obamacare provides necessary coverage to poor Americans in areas devastated by the opioid plague, including Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, and Arkansas, all states with high levels of poverty that were won by Donald Trump. A study by Harvard University and New York University found that Medicaid expansion provides substance abuse or mental health services to almost 1.3 million people. Crucially, in states like Kentucky, Massachusetts, Maryland, Ohio, and West Virginia, Medicaid expansion has made possible the use of medication-assisted treatment to combat the opioid problem. Medicaid covers between 35 to 50% of MAT in these states. Further, under the ACA Essentials Health Benefit provisions, insurers are required to make substance abuse treatment available to enrollees. According to Christy Green, a public health director for the Cumberland Valley District in southeastern Kentucky, addicts are likelier to seek treatment if they have insurance to cover it. It is 100% out of their financial range if they aren't covered, she said. To compensate for the Medicaid cuts, Senate Republicans have offered $45 billion over 10 years to support the opioid plague. This penance is a joke, according to Richard Franks, a health economic professor at Harvard. To sufficiently fill the void, he estimates the need for $183 billion over 10 years, based on Medicaid data, to cover opioid addiction treatment and the illness offered associated with it. Yeah, that's amazing. They got all this money to spend when the junkies are white. When the crack epidemic was going on, nobody was sitting around talking about spending a dime. Unbelievable. 6 months after Trump's inauguration, many of the issues he vowed to address remain not only unsolved, but largely untouched. Most poignant of all are the promises Trump made to parts of America riven by the opioid plague, addressing a hopeful crowd in New Hampshire weeks before the November general election. Trump pledged to take care of the crisis. Then he asks, "What's taking so long?" We should ask him the same question now. There you go. Okay? Trump does not and never will give a damn about a single junkie in this country. Let me go ahead and play this video. See if it'll work. Not, it's no big deal.
I've wanted to act since I came out of the womb, I think. As a little girl who wanted to be on stage and perform, I didn't know that years later I was going to be dealing with acne, which could be pretty discouraging when you go into an audition room and you know the first thing they're looking at is what you look like. And I know what people saw me for was acne, and trying not to let that define me as who I was. Giving myself my own definition as somebody who could persevere through it all. One way to get past not being casted in things due to my acne was improv. You're gonna make people laugh and you get that instant feedback of the audience responding to you. I had the choice where I could either let acne take that away from me, or I could accept it and still do what I love. And to me, there wasn't a question.
The opioid epidemic kills about 90 people a day, and last year the Food and Drug Administration called on the help of an independent advisory panel to help reinforce its campaign against the epidemic. The resulting report from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine was released on Thursday. It comes filled with a variety of recommendations for the FDA, including state syringe exchange programs and an increase in federal funding for neurobiology research. The expert panel also suggests that the FDA significantly expand the evidence required from pharmaceutical companies to prove that an opioid is effective and safe before and after it receives market approval.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Peace, family.